the Thanksgiving that changed everything. My name is Evelyn Hargrove. I'm 51 years old, a senior accountant living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. For most of my life, I believed I had built something steady and meaningful: 25 years of marriage, 2 wonderful kids, a good career, and a lovely old house in Heritage Hill. I thought I knew what my life would look like, growing old with my husband, watching our children grow up and start their own families, retiring someday and maybe traveling a little. But all of that changed on Thanksgiving Day. We had the whole family over, our children, my sister Patricia and her husband, and a few close relatives. The food was warm, the house smelled like roasted turkey and sweet potatoes, and everything felt like it should have: safe, familiar, full of tradition. Until Scott, my husband, stood up from his chair at the head of the table, raised his wine glass, and said with a strange sort of confidence, "I'm leaving. I'm in love with my secretary." The room fell silent. My son David froze mid-bite, fork in the air. My daughter Katie stared at her plate like she was trying to disappear into it. Patricia's mouth fell open, and her husband couldn't look up from his napkin. Then Scott added, almost proudly, "She's 22. She's everything you're not, Evelyn." I calmly set my silverware down and wiped the corners of my mouth with a napkin. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "Good timing, actually," I replied. I could barely feel anything at that moment. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe it was just years of learning how to stay calm in chaos. But deep down, I knew something had snapped. Scott had decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. He didn't just betray me in private, he chose to break our family apart at the dinner table, in front of our kids, on a day that was supposed to be about love and togetherness. "We can talk later," he said like he was being generous. "To new beginnings," he added, lifting his glass higher. No one joined his toast. Katie ran from the room crying. David looked like he wanted to throw something at his father. I looked at Scott and simply said, "I think you should leave." But he didn't. He told me it was his house too and that he'd pack tomorrow. After that, the guests left quietly, trying not to make eye contact. Scott disappeared into his study with the wine bottle. I stood there alone in our dining room, surrounded by half-eaten food and broken trust. I started clearing dishes, not knowing what else to do. My body moved on autopilot. And that's when I noticed the blinking light on our answering machine. I pressed play. It was a message from James Benedict, my late Uncle Edward's lawyer. "Evelyn, I have important news regarding your uncle's estate. Please call me as soon as possible." My Uncle Edward, my mother's brother, had died 3 weeks ago. He was a private man, a bachelor who made millions in real estate. I'd always been close to him, but I never expected anything from his will. Maybe a small keepsake, nothing more. But as it turns out, Scott's dramatic exit would soon be overshadowed by something even more surprising. How it all began. Scott and I met in college at Michigan State. He was charming, full of ideas, always smiling. I was the organized one, the planner. We fell in love fast and married at 26. I had just started my job at a local accounting firm. He had just opened a small insurance agency. The early years were hard, money was tight, but we made it work. We bought a beautiful old Victorian house that needed a lot of love. We spent weekends painting, fixing, and building a home together. I went back to work 6 weeks after each child was born, always balancing motherhood and career. As Scott's business grew, he changed. First, it was the downtown office. Then came the expensive suits, the country club membership. I supported him through all of it, his highs, his risks, his ego. I believed we were building a life together. My own career was steady. I wasn't flashy, but I was dependable. I rose through the ranks, earned respect, and made sure our family had something to fall back on. Uncle Edward used to say, "You're the ant, everyone else is a grasshopper, you always think ahead." Even during his cancer diagnosis, I visited every week. I brought him food, sat with him, listened. I never knew just how much those visits meant to him. Looking back, I saw the signs. Scott started criticizing my clothes. He started working out, dyeing his hair, and came home later and later. He bought a convertible without asking. I smelled perfume on him some nights. When he hired Jessica, a secretary half his age, I felt something shift, but I told myself it was nothing, just a phase, a midlife crisis. Patricia even said, "Don't worry, remember when Edward bought that motorcycle at 50? So I waited for it to pass. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I stopped by Scott's office to surprise him with lunch. The receptionist gave me a strange look. His door was locked. I heard giggling inside. Still, I left the sandwiches and drove back to work. I told myself there must be a reasonable explanation. I chose loyalty over truth, trust over suspicion. And that's how I ended up here, watching my husband drink alone after tearing our family apart. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and called James Benedict. Later, Scott came down the stairs with a suitcase. Jessica's apartment is too small, he said. I'll stay at the Park View Hotel until we find something. When did this start? I asked. He sighed. In July, at the company picnic, she saw me, Evelyn. She made me feel seen. She's 22, I said. Everything is exciting at 22. He didn't respond, he just walked back upstairs. That's when the courier arrived, delivering a certified letter from James Benedict. I opened it at the kitchen counter. Uncle Edward had left everything to me. I was now the sole beneficiary of a $4.7 million estate. There was a note inside, written in his handwriting. Evelyn, I've always admired your loyalty and strength. Life will test both. This is your safety net, use it well. Tears welled up in my eyes. He had seen me, truly seen me, even when my own husband hadn't. A new beginning. By Monday, I sat in James Benedict's office going over the details. The money, the real estate, the charitable foundation, it was all mine. I finally had freedom, financial independence, options. That night, I told Patricia everything. She nearly dropped her wine glass. You're rich, she said, stunned. Scott has no idea, does he? Not yet, I replied. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled, not out of habit, but because I finally felt something powerful growing inside me. Not sadness, not fear. Clarity, strength, purpose. Scott had walked away from me thinking he was trading up. But the truth? He just walked out on the best thing he ever had. And now, I was free to become the woman I was always meant to be. On the outside, I stayed calm, but inside, I was a whirlwind of pain, anger, and silent calculations. The house felt different now. The kids came and went, offering hugs, words of support, and sometimes just sitting with me in silence. They were angry, too, angry at their father, angry at how he chose to blow up everything. Katie refused to take his calls. She didn't even want to hear his voice. David, trying to be mature about it, agreed to meet Scott for coffee, but when he came back, his face was tight with fury. He tried to spin it like he was the victim. David told me, said he wasted his best years providing for us, like you didn't give up your whole life right alongside him. I didn't respond, I just nodded slowly, letting the words sit between us. There was truth in David's outrage, a truth I had felt deeply but hadn't dared to voice out loud yet. By Monday morning, I had pulled myself together enough to keep my appointment with James Benedict, Uncle Edward's lawyer. His downtown office was everything you'd expect from an old, respected law firm: dark wood walls, tall windows, thick carpets that quieted every step. James, a man in his 60s with neat silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, greeted me warmly. Your uncle spoke very highly of you, he said kindly as we sat down. He admired your steady nature, said you were always calm in the storm. For 2 solid hours, we talked. James explained the full extent of what Uncle Edward had left me. I sat stunned as he laid out the inheritance: 6 commercial buildings in and around Grand Rapids, a well-diversified portfolio of investments, controlling shares in a property management company, and, most surprising of all, full control over a charitable foundation that supported scholarships and education programs. Edward believed in financial independence, James explained, handing me a folder filled with legal documents, especially for women. His mother, your grandmother, was left with nothing after his father died. It haunted him. He added that the entire inheritance had been structured to remain legally separate from any marital assets. That detail, I knew immediately, would become very important in the near future. I walked out of that office with a heavy folder, a spinning mind, and a stronger spine. I was no longer just a grieving wife or a discarded partner. I had power now, real power. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Scott: need to talk finances, dinner tonight? I replied with a simple, okay. I chose a neutral restaurant, a quiet Italian place downtown. We had once celebrated anniversaries there, back when I still believed in forever. Scott showed up looking a strange mix of smug and nervous. He leaned in and kissed my cheek like we were still a happily married couple, not two people standing on opposite sides of a shattered life. "You look good," he said slowly, like he expected me to be a mess, puffy eyes, unbrushed hair, maybe even begging him to come back. I didn't give him that satisfaction. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. He cleared his throat and looked down at his menu before speaking. "I've been thinking about the house. It makes sense for you to stay, obviously, but we should talk about, compensation." I blinked. "Compensation?" "My half of the equity," he said, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "I thought we could arrange a buyout, over time, of course. I know you don't have the cash on hand." The audacity nearly made me laugh. He was leaving me for a woman 20 years younger and still expected me to pay him so he could go play house with her. "I'll need some time to think," I replied coolly. He gave me a gracious nod, like he was doing me a favor. "Of course, it's a lot to absorb, but Jessica and I will need capital to get settled. I'm sure you get it." "Oh, I got it. I got that he saw me not as a partner or a person, just a bank account to be tapped one last time before moving on." "I'll have my attorney contact you," I said, keeping my voice level. His eyes narrowed. "You already hired a lawyer? That's a bit aggressive, don't you think? I thought we could keep this civil." "Was blindsiding me at Thanksgiving what you consider civil?" I shot back. He flinched. Okay, maybe the timing wasn't great, but I needed a clean break. "For Jessica," I finished for him. He looked away, fiddling with his watch, the same nervous tick he always had when we were going over bills and budgets. "She deserves a new beginning," he said, "without ghosts from my past. She's young, she's got her whole life ahead." "And I don't?" I said sharply. "Is that what you're trying to say?" No, that's not what I meant." He reached for my hand, but I moved it away. "You'll be fine, Evelyn," he said, forcing a smile. "You've always been resilient." Resilient, that word sat in the air like smoke. He meant it as a compliment, but it came with baggage, like I was just someone who could survive anything, so it was okay to hurt me. "You're right," I said, "I am resilient." He must have sensed a change in my tone, because he suddenly looked wary. "We need to sort out the practical details," he said. "Assets, support, what's fair for both of us. There are some irregularities," I cut in, "things I'd like to address first." He blinked. "Irregularities?" "Yes, roughly $47,000 has been withdrawn from our joint savings over the past 6 months. His face reddened. "Business expenses, short-term cash flow issues." I was going to put it back. "With what?" I asked. "Your agency's been losing money for 3 years. That hit the mark. His expression shifted just slightly, panic, then cover-up mode. "How do you know that?" he asked. "I'm an accountant, Scott. I track numbers. I see patterns." He tried to smile again, the same fake smile he used on clients. "This is why we need to stay rational. These are emotional times. We can't just throw around accusations." I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was our bank statement. "These dates line up perfectly with your late nights and weekend client meetings." He stared at it, then at me. The friendly mask dropped. "Fine," he snapped. "I've been planning to leave. Can you blame me? 25 years of the same boring routine, the same boring wife." It was meant to cut, and maybe a week ago, it would have, but not now. "I want the money returned," I said calmly. "All of it." He laughed. "Not happening. Think of it as the cost of your freedom." "No, Scott, what you're offering isn't freedom, it's betrayal, dressed up as a favor." "You've always been judgmental," he hissed. "Jessica accepts me. Jessica doesn't know you, not yet, but she will." That stopped him. His face changed, like something clicked in his mind. "What does that mean?" he asked, eyes narrowing. Before I could answer, his phone lit up. It was Jessica calling. "Go ahead," I said smoothly. "She's probably waiting to hear how nicely things are going." He hesitated, then stood and stepped away to take the call. I watched him pace, whispering urgently, trying to protect his perfect story. I signaled for the check. And as I waited, I thought about the meeting with James that morning. The inheritance was just the beginning. Because Uncle Edward hadn't just left me money, he'd left behind truths. His private investigator had uncovered something else, something that could bring Scott's shiny little world crumbling down. And I was going to use it.